Thank you for coming, Ranta. It's great to see you again, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you too. And thank you for inviting me here. This bar looks great.
Yeah. And it's been a really difficult year for all of us, I'm sure. The pandemic has been a terrible experience for all of us. How have you been coping with the pandemic?
Well, you have to learn to live with it. Of course, it was quite hard. It made me and my previous company also to change the policies. Mm-hmm. So actually now I am more free because I will leave the company from beginning of February this year, actually. But of course it has affected no travel or almost no travel abroad. Mm-hmm. And well, I traveled once now in end of November. So when I came back, I have to be at home, guarded for 2 weeks.
I see.
in a home isolation. In a home quarantine. So it was a little bit strange because you cannot go out and they call you they call you a couple of times a day and you have to record your temperature and your situation on an app. So it was a little bit strange, but you learn to live with everything.
People are very adjustable to the situation and condition, but nevertheless, I think the whole world did not expect this pandemic to last so long and the pandemic to be so widespread. So in that sense, I think we are now living in a new normal age. And speaking of new normal, I have heard that you have lived in Korea for now 31 years.
Yeah, actually, yes, time goes fast. This is my 32nd year, started now already this year.
Wow.
So, yeah, it feels like I came here the month before last.
Wow.
Time goes too fast.
You almost lived in Korea as long as you lived in Finland.
Well, actually much more, because
Really?
I used to live in other countries before coming here. Sweden, Norway, Germany and USA. So actually the Finland time is much less.
How that made you live in Korea for such a long time? I mean, it must not be just the job. I mean, why did you live in
Well,
Korea?
it's not just the job. Of course, in the beginning, you know, I was sent here. I was asked that we have a job in Korea. We want to go there. I said, yes, a young guy. Yeah, why not? But I don't know where it is. So I end up here, and then actually the first job was to supply the drilling machine to find the tunnels under the border, the infiltration tunnels.
Wow.
So, well, but then in the beginning of 90s, you know, there was a boom coming up with all kind of construction, new highways, and also the high-speed railway, the KTX was decided, and then a big apartment boom, and also started the Incheon airport works, and so many different kind of works. So, because I was in foundation engineering and tunneling and drilling, then I was just asked that, okay, please develop the business here.
I see. Which company was this? Was it a Finnish
That
company?
was a Finnish company, Tamrock, but it became Sandvik now. It's a Swedish company these days, but the facility still for the capital equipment is in Finland.
I see.
So there has been a lot of mergers between Finnish and Swedish companies back and forth. So it is one of them.
Tell me about your experience in Korea. I mean, 31 years is a very long time. What kind of inconvenience as a foreigner living in Korea? I mean, when you came to Korea, it was the end of the 80s, right?
Yeah, right.
So Korea at that time was just barely becoming, how do you say, well, it was very much inward-looking country because only in the late 80s when the Olympic in Seoul came was the curfew lifted. Foreign travel was before then banned. No one were able to go abroad. So people were very unaware of outside world. So Korea was a very, how do you say, an inward-looking country. So therefore, as a foreigner, especially a Westerner, you must have felt quite different.
Yeah, sure, different, but Koreans were always very kind. So that made an impression. And also the Korean respect for foreigner, but also against towards elder people, it made a big impression to me. And of course, these days, Koreans were used to Americans, so they always telling, so that maybe Migugin is all foreigners instead of the foreigner itself, because they thought almost all foreigners were Americans because of the soldiers over here at that time. And actually we had curfew still that time when I came. But I don't remember any hardship or any inconveniences because of that. The Korean hospitality, the Korean kindness, the Korean respect was such that made me a big impression that I couldn't feel almost anywhere else.
But language barrier?
Yeah, but that also, well, of course, in the beginning you couldn't read anything, but I learned the alphabet by just looking at the signboards on the road, and that was not too difficult. But that was very beginning only, because once you can read what is there, you still don't understand what's the word stand for, most of it. So yes, of course, that was a little bit difficult, but because of the people's helpfulness, I didn't feel that was a problem. And then I started slowly to pick up the language as well, but it took quite long because I really didn't study the language.
But now you speak Korean very well.
No, 아니에요. 많이 부족해요.
What about the cultural differences?
I already said a little bit that I would say that the respect and the kindness and helpfulness as such, the respect for the elderly, the respect for the other people, I would say that that's the biggest part of the culture I felt was very positive to me. And I feel that now it's actually a little bit loosening up or changing. And I feel that Koreans really should keep their culture strongly like it was. And the younger generation stay the similar way on cultural respect. So that they would not feel that the Western culture is always better. Because I think I was impressed by the Korean culture. And if it changed to Western, I feel that you have to learn new things, and you have to learn new technologies, and you have to learn new ways of working as such. But the basic culture, I hope that it stays in Korea, because it's the chic, it's the very good part of Korea, I would say.
So you have seen the old sort of Korea, in a sense, the traditional Korea, which was still intact because Korea was closed in those days. But now you see Korea, a more globalized Korea, with the younger generation becoming more internationalized and absorbing all Western culture and everything that is Western style of cultural aspects. And some of it you think is not as good as it used to be, in the sense that olden traditional culture was better?
Yeah, I think as culture-wise, but of course we should learn and we should adapt to the new technologies and new ways. But the basic culture itself, I don't think that needs to be changed. I feel that is not necessarily. Then the world becomes more similar. I think the special things of Korea should remain, but of course all new technological things and advantages, robotics, AI and other things should be applied and used.
Isn't this what all the older generation says to the younger generation in any culture? You should.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I lived now in Korea, so I feel it by being here. But it could be, in some sense. Of course, elder people is part of this thing, and then the younger generation changed the style of working. But I feel that, okay, changing to a new way of thinking is fine, but still keep the basics of Korea over there, so that it doesn't modern Korea, make a modern Korea that you develop by yourself. I think that would be important. That comes from the Korean development, but copy or learn the so-called Western way. I feel that that's not a good path.
I agree with you in the sense that in Korea there is a very strong division between the generations. The older generation, my generation or my father's generation, who have experienced hardships. For instance, my father's generation has experienced colonization, war, hunger, and all kinds of, it was a third world country. I mean, the economy was almost nothing. I mean, there was nothing when they were growing up, and they really worked hard to make something out of the country by diligency, very much trying to make something out of this country, and they did. They were able to accomplish something. Now, the younger generation, they have been able to receive that privilege of the hardship, hard work that the older generation have achieved. They have been able to live a very prosperous life, good education, good social benefits, and lifestyle. And they don't understand the older generations, what they went through in order to achieve all this. And they don't appreciate as much. So there is this very sort of not understanding each other. The older generation says the younger generation does not work hard, doesn't understand what the difficulty of life is. They take it too easily, everything. They don't work as hard, they don't try hard, they give up too easily. And the younger generation says that the older generation doesn't know how to enjoy life. They just are so serious of life. They only want to, they are only say work hard, work hard. Life is not all about work. It's about enjoying, it's about being happy, it's about fulfillment, satisfaction, but the older generation is never satisfied, never happy. More and more and more. So there is this sort of division. They don't understand each other and they don't communicate enough. So in Korea, that is a very serious problem these days. Not understanding each other, the generations.
I feel that. I feel that, and that's a pity. But I think in some sense, when you talk about the Korean culture, there is, of course, the one thing that the elder generation, once you have the respect as such, but you push and you order the younger generation. And it should be the opposite way. The younger generation should pull the information and actually want to do by themselves that and somehow create the attitude and the atmosphere that the younger generation actually gets interested what you want to do. So the elder generation should be more clever in that they don't order because the younger generation hate that. I can feel that. So I don't want to order anything to my sons also. I feel that create the atmosphere that actually you pull from the information and the history and the hardships somehow. It's not easy, but how can you create that atmosphere that instead of pushing, work hard or things, but learn to do that by some other way and get the respect in that sense. In that sense, I think there could be a possibility for change. I think Korea is too. The elder generation just order, and I think that's not the good part of it.
Yes. You have a son who is living in Korea.
Yeah, right.
And I've seen him on television, and he speaks Korean like a Korean. And Does he think like a Korean?
Well, of course he.
But he looks Finnish, of course.
Yeah,
100%
he has a facelift. No, yeah, well, he has been living here since he was 100 days old because, you know, my first son was born here in Cha Hospital.
Wow, yes.
In Gangnam, not far from here, actually.
Okay.
So, but the second son was born 1.5 years after that in Finland because that time, yes, we had a hardship because I couldn't find somebody to take care of my first son. So my son's mother had to go to Finland.
I see.
The reason was that my second son was born in Finland because somebody had to watch the first son during that time.
When your wife was delivering the baby and after the baby was born, someone had to take care of the first son. I see, okay.
So her mother took care of the first son at that time. And then I remember they were about 4 months in Finland, 1 month before and a couple of months after. So it was about, I think, actually less than 100 days he came here. So
almost all his life he was in Korea.
No, well, yes. In Korea they learned Korean because in Finland, at home we spoke Finnish. And then they went to the Korean Yuchiwon, to the Korean kindergarten, which was very good. They learned actually everything to be like a Korean.
Yes.
And then the next step was Korean Chodunghakki, a Korean primary school, not the international, Korean primary school. And they were the only foreigners over there that time. They were even the the school president was she didn't know what to do as a foreigner. But once they learned in the Yuchiwons to speak, and my son came there and was fluent already in Korean, so they accepted him that time. And then during those days I said that, okay, first important is Korean, second is Finnish, and English is not important.
He did say that he didn't speak English well. Does he speak English well now?
No, now, but actually that time I said, because I have seen so many children that they go to international school and actually they don't learn the original language after that.
Okay.
So during those days, actually I wanted them to learn Korean first. Finnish they spoke at home, but we made one mistake. We made one big mistake.
Which is?
We didn't read and write with them with Western alphabet. So after I recognized that and I tried to read with them or write them alphabet, they said, Hangul is so much easier. Why I have to learn this for
Hangul
alphabet?
Is so much easier.
Yeah. So they wrote even the messages in Hangul in Finnish. I mean, you can use Hangul for Finnish. So then I thought, well, I told them that, well, okay, you have two choices. The people around you, the Westerners and Finnish people, you teach them Hangul also to use it because it's so easy, or you better learn the alphabet. They didn't want, so I had to send them actually to Juhak, to Finland. And then they went 2 years, 3 years, 2 years.
Okay.
And they stayed in a Finnish school, in a small Finnish village school. Big difference from a huge school to a school of 6 classes with only 50 people.
I see. And
so then they learned Finnish. After that, once they knew well Korean and they knew Finnish, then actually I thought, okay, then they came back to Korea and they went to international school here, so they learned also English.
Is there a problem of them being confused of their identity?
I'm not sure, but I could think about myself because I moved to Sweden when I went to the primary school, and I didn't know Swedish, and I was just flooded. How to say, to put in kind of language path, because knowing anything you just start pick up, and I learned it like that. No problem. I thought, why not Korean as well?
Well, I learned English like that. I was in the United States when I was 7. And I was put into an American kindergarten.
Okay.
And after 6 months, it came to me. I started hearing English, and it just happened.
It's the same, you and me, and then, but my son's only the difference was the language was Korean.
Yes.
Yeah, Actually, I have not asked them about that, but of course it may cause some difficulties from time to time. But I feel it's an advantage, or it's a richness. It's
Yes.
yes.
There is that too, but sometimes you do feel that you are kind of an outsider.
Yeah.
Because you don't seem to be completely a part of either side.
Yeah, the main thing outsider you really feel during the Lunar New Year and during the Thanksgiving Day, during Chuseok and Kujong. Because, you know, everybody has their ancestors and you go with the only family and you go to the graves. And that's the time when you feel that, I really don't belong here. Where do I belong?
Okay.
That's the hard time. But otherwise, every else time is fine.
When I saw your son on the television and Korean entertainment program channel, his behavior, his manner was very, how do you say, his manner was very etiquette. He was very well-mannered, very Korean well-mannered, traditional well-mannered style. You don't see that anymore.
Really?
Yes. And I was thinking, what? I mean, even Koreans don't do that kind of very polite. And I was wondering, he's a rare breed.
Because I didn't push him.
Yeah.
I didn't push him to do that. So maybe he pulled it himself.
Yes.
So that's what I said in the beginning, that I think the one issue with the generation gap over here is that the senior actually orders too strongly. I think one way is that you give the surrounding and you are more, how to say, the open, but you support, but let your sons or your children invent the thing themselves. That's, I think, very important for the generation change.
Yes.
That's my kind of thinking of that.
I think, in a way, in the old days in Korea, the reason why young people and older people were not able to talk honestly, openly with each other was because of that gap. Because people, if you are a certain age, you have to behave a certain way. So you cannot talk openly or honestly between each other. So they were reluctant to meet or have a candid conversation between each other.
That's what I heard now, because I went to Finland now with, we went actually to establish a Korean school in Finland, or no, Finnish school for Koreans in Finland, and I had one of the retired colonel with me to join.
Korean retired colonel.
Yes.
Living in Finland?
No, living in Korea.
Living in Korea?
Yeah. So we went to see a school, and we want to establish actually a Finnish style, English speaking, Cambridge curriculum school. Cambridge, like here. Cambridge curriculum school in Finland. And then my first son was also joining to speak about that and look for that. And we had a very long discussions when we riding in the car. So the Korean said, "Oh, you are discussing so much with your son, but that's not common in Korea." That in Korea it's more like more distant actually, and he was surprised of that. So I can feel that. I think I'm in that sense I'm lucky that I don't know. I should ask my son if I ever pushed too much, but I try not to push. So it's all open. They can do what they want. Only I have always said you should decide what you want to do.
Yes, of course.
That's all. But not let it fully go. But I never. I feel, I don't know if they are the same agreement, but anyhow, I feel that I never order them straightly to do things.
If we Korean were more open between parent and children, we're able to acknowledge them as person rather than their children or their parents, and we're able to talk more openly with each other, then I think it will be a much better situation. But because you are expected to act in a certain way, behave in a certain way, manner, you're not honest. You cannot be honest. You lie to your parents, pretend that you're something you're not. Therefore, you act as though you are something else in order not to disappoint your parents.
Right.
And the parents just see what they want to see and say, oh, my children are what they want them to be.
Yeah.
But they're not. And this is very, very bad. I think it's a bad situation.
Yeah.
And when they really find out what they want or what they really like, then it becomes very disappointing to them.
Yeah.
But it should not be like that.
We had actually, my son was here. He came here for 4 weeks, 2 weeks. My eldest son as well. So 2 weeks we were together in the home quarantine. So we had 2 weeks together. We stayed at home only, he and me, because my other Korean, the one who lives here, he was staying outside because he cannot also join us. So we had a chance to talk also many things, but also we had quite good arguments. So we were actually arguing about things as well. So I tried to listen and learn from my son. Actually, I think that's could be a good attitude as well. You know, listen to your son what he has to say, or let him change you and let him guide you.
Absolutely.
But I think that would not be possible in Korea. Maybe.
Very difficult.
Yeah. So that would be very difficult.
Very difficult. Now, can we actually? Is this something that you brought for us to drink? Or?
Oh yes, I thought because you know I don't drink alcohol actually too much these days. But in my company Cargotech, I used to we have a factory in Dundalk in Ireland.
In Ireland,
and we visited this whiskey factory over there. And I learned to like this whiskey. It's a peated single malt Irish whiskey. And it's the only whiskey in Ireland which is peated. So you know, peated is when you make from barley, you make malt, then you warm it up, and it's actually fired by peat. So there becomes in the barley and the malt there becomes some smoke taste from the peat smoke, and that's why it is here.
I didn't even know that Ireland made single malt whiskey.
Yeah, well, this is actually maybe I'm not also too familiar, but anyhow. I like this one, so I'd like to offer this to you.
Thank you so much. Let us have a taste. It's my first. I did try some Irish whiskey, but never tried this one before. The good thing about this program is that we get to try these very good single malt whiskeys.
That's one of the praise. So,
yes,
okay.
This is one of the
Cheers.
good parts of this
Hippies.
program. Yes,
In Finnish.
Hippies.
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 Yeah.
Hippies. Oh, it has that
Aroma.
aroma. Oh. Has that aftertaste is
Honey taste.
yeah, quite sweet. Oh, it's very unusual taste. Very good, actually. Very good.
Then you should have also between the sips you should have some water.
Yes, thank you.
And the best water comes actually from
Finland.
According to UN records.
Well, I know that Finland has the best forests. Whenever I go to Finland, I feel that the nature, I mean, you only have 5.5 million people,
Yeah.
but
Right.
you have a lot of land in comparison to the population, of course. But having said that, I mean, you have now shifted from being a rural agricultural farming country to a more high-tech industry country.
Right.
And the beginning was it from Nokia or before? were you into being a high-tech country even before Nokia, or was it starting from Nokia?
Well, let's say there is the development of industries from beginning. Finland's first industry was actually from forest producing tar. So all the Spanish and British fleets, they used the tar from Finland to protect the wooden ships. But
Okay.
that was first the forest product. Of course, after that there's timber and there is other things. But actually industrialization started from Second World War in Finland. And the reason was that unfortunately Finland was a loser in the war and had to pay big amount of repatriation to Soviet Union.
You worked with the Nazis.
Well,
to fight with the Soviets.
Yeah, but you have to remember that we were not Nazis in Finland.
But
not really.
Yeah.
The only thing was maybe if you know in history,
Yeah.
if you come back a little bit over there, you know, Stalin and Hitler made an agreement. They divided the Northern Europe, Poland, the Baltic states and Finland to the kind of first areas who can have what.
Yes.
And according to that, Russia can have half of Poland and Germany half, and Baltic states can have Russia, and also Finland can the Russia. I mean that time not Russia, Soviet Union can take them.
Yeah,
I
Finland.
mean they divided because they kind of were two big rulers, two tsars, warlords. And they wanted to expand, so they divided the one. And then in 1939, Soviet Union attacked Finland, and Germany attacked Poland. And actually the Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Soviet just said that they want to negotiate and they want to join, and they agreed without fight to move into the Soviet bloc, but Finland didn't. So Finland fought against Russians, against Soviet Union Russians actually. And they defended Finland. And actually that maybe caused some of the big crucial points of the war to change, because Hitler thought that Soviet Union is very weak because they couldn't even conquer Finland. And then, you know, Hitler, you know, the history is Hitler also attacked Soviet Union later. But the situation made it so that, okay, Soviet Union was enemy of Finland, and then later Soviet Union allied with UK and US. Then at the final end, Finland was alone against Soviet, because then Soviet wanted to take back or take Finland even that time at later stage. Then Finland had to defend. UK and US, well, we already allied with the Soviet. What can we do? So then the only place to have some support was Germany. So Finland joined Germany, but at the final end, Finland had a war against Germany. So Finland fought the Germans out from Finland with heavy losses as well, actually. So I would not say that we were part of the German mentality.
But you had to pay the
because we were then loser side against Soviet Union. But the benefit of that was Finland industry developed, and Finland made a lot of different kind of items. Even my companies, the container handling equipment was developed that time. Locomotives, ships, and so on and so on. Heavy industry developed because we had to pay the repatriations to Soviet Union. And that actually gave us a big position, and it was part of the industrialization that helped us to start. And actually then once the repatriation was paid, and I think the last part actually was given. So not all, maybe in the 60s sometimes, it was kind of settled. But then Finland had an industry, already more than some other countries, and developed different kind of product. So the industrialization started from there. Paper machines, ships, shipping in, the shipyards, and also the different kind of locomotives, and also this container handling, drilling equipment, and so many different industries actually.
When you say
developed.
Container handling, what do you...
Well, I mean the ship container, I mean sea container.
Containers, you mean the handling the containers?
Yeah, right. So there's kind of straddle carriers, you have them, it's like
Is that what your company used to do? The cargo tech did?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And it's actually from the government company part is a basis for our group as well.
Okay.
So actually that start from there. But then when we say now, sorry, a little bit about the history here to come to the situation, to your questions.
Yes.
So of course, you mentioned Finland is a huge country, but few people. So distances are big. So there was, because of the distances are big, it's actually not that cheap to build a fixed network of telephones. So actually in the 60s already, Finland started to use then the radio telephones. I mean, to communicate and make the systems instead of making fixed lines. And in the 70s, developed further. And actually then, I think the Motorola in USA had that technology because of army and defense systems they made, but Finland because of the distances. So they made the kind of the beginning of the mobile phones, which were big, maybe weighing 10 kilos with a big battery and big boxes. But that was already beginning of 80s. And I remember when I started working in Finland, actually 86, in my company, I got a big telephone and used it in my car, and I could carry it around and call from there. And then I had because I was 2 years in US, and my American family actually, that was where I lived there, came to visit Finland. And then I had my big mobile phone in my car, and I said them, let's call to your family. And they were really surprised because we dialed the number and they could call from the car to USA. And they never seen that before.
That was a big thing then. Yes.
It was a very big thing for them, for Americans. Actually that time, because it was not common. So Nokia was in that sense the forefront in developing that, and it started because of the long distances and to make cheaper ways to connect all over the country. But Nokia history also started as a power plant, paper factory.
Really?
And then they made rubber boots. Before, in the 60s, Korea flooded rubber boots and took over the market. But Nokia rubber boots still exist, but it's a kind of some other company took over. Then tires. Then also cables, and that was kind of the after the paper factory, they industrialized in several other rubber boots, tires, cables, and some other industries. And then in the 70s, they started to develop this mobile phone technology together with actually some government company who was using it as well for the country, and they took over and started to develop the technology for that. So that was, I think, in the 80s when the Nokia made those things and then developed that further. And then, of course, later came the others. But in the 80s also, Nokia had the biggest factory in Korea. It was in Masan due to the tax-free zone. And in the beginning of 90s, Nokia was biggest Korea's exporter. They had a huge number of exports. And that was all mobile phones, because that was not for Korean market, it was for global market.
I see.
So that was in Masan, Sayumuyokjiok in Masan. They had, I think, more than 1,000 people over there that time. And as I remember, they got the prize being Korea's biggest exporter during those days.
Okay. So you had Nokia, and then so mobile phone was the main, ICT was the main sort of industry for Finland at that time.
Right.
Nokia at one point covered something like 25%, 30% of the GDP of Finland.
Yeah, right.
Now then the crash, boom. It didn't go, it was not able to transform.
No, it has transformed. But anyhow, in the beginning, yes, Nokia, actually that's the beginning of Finland's innovativeness. In the years 2000 something, 90s, but still it started dropping in the 90s, and 2000s Nokia was dropping. Actually then, they sold the mobile phone business to Microsoft.
Yes.
And that time the Masan factory was also closed because Korean government resisted actually the transfer of the factory to Microsoft. So they had to close it so that they can sell the business as quick as possible. So they sold it, but Microsoft couldn't do anything with it. So finally they closed it down. Nokia got 5 billion euros for that, or maybe US dollars, anyhow, big amount. But then once they sold it, they concentrated on the networks. So the LTE and 5G.
5G.
So at the moment also Nokia has I think some 600 or 700 people in Korea. And they merged also Alcatel-Lucent, maybe you know that.
Yes,
and
yes.
also the Bell Laboratories in USA, you know, that is Nokia Bell Laboratories.
Now they sell equipment.
No, they sell the LTE and 5G networks, and in Korea their market share also more than 30% actually. So it's once we use our phones, both KT, SK, and LG U+, they have Nokia networks.
Yes. Network equipment selling.
Yes, and the systems.
System.
And of course now with the Huawei boycott, I think it has helped Nokia also these days a little bit more. So there is now 3 main, if we count Huawei, but then there is Ericsson, Nokia, and Samsung, who are the 3 main players in global networks in addition to Huawei.
So, in those areas, and which area also are you now big in AI as well, or?
Well, AI is you can apply in many different ways, depend on the company. So I think AI is in a development stage in that sense that it's not ready. So I mean I think AI okay, you have the translators, for instance. Now you can speak to your phone and it translates it. That's based on AI. And of course some of the big IT companies use AI well in that sense. But then in many other industries you can use it to learn different things and collect. If you have big data, I mean you collect a lot of data that you can otherwise difficult to handle, so you can divide it to different things. But before that, I would say that as such, an AI company there is no big. But if I still come back to Nokia, so after they stopped the mobile business and even Microsoft closed the business, there was a lot of people laid off from Nokia. But they all got quite good paycheck, and actually they got what is that? A kind of
game development.
Special money to develop startups. And then actually from the people who has been in Nokia, they developed so many different companies who are
Angry
now.
Bird.
Well, maybe they.
It's a very famous game.
Yeah, games is
developed.
one. Maybe Supercell is the most famous. But it's not Nokia people who made that. It was
Angry
just
Bird was.
Yeah, maybe there is some people. But Supercell, actually, the Clash of Clans. You heard of that game?
Yes, Clash of Clans.
Yeah. That is by Finnish group Supercell, who sold it then to Japan, to this SoftBank. And SoftBank sold it to China. But still the Finnish students, actually my juniors from my university, they were at age less than 30. 3 or 4 guys who established it. They are now Finland's billionaires because they sold it first to SoftBank and still keeping 50% and running the company. And then they sold it to China. SoftBank sold their share to China, but the Finns keep still the 50% of that company. And that's a really success story, not Nokia related. But of course, Finland had the surrounding and kind of atmosphere for that because of Nokia IT industry, and of course in university also you refer to Nokia's technologies and so on. So of course some of the things probably related to it. But I would say that the biggest things for innovative and tech-related companies came from all those startups that were different fields of Nokia before.
You have in Finland these big startup contests every year, I think.
Yeah.
Going around.
Yeah, Slush is
all over the world.
Not all over the world. It's actually Finland, but there has been also Tokyo and where in Singapore and some other areas, smaller ones. But the main event has been in Finland. That also started by students, actually, and it has been very successful because they collected the people, the financiers and the venture capitalists and others who can invest, and you have those sessions that you speak up and you explain your story and your startup, and then you can have your investors from there. So that has been a very successful story as well, but it started from students. Yeah. Actually, also my school students.
Which school is this?
The Helsinki. Well, now it's Aalto University.
Aalto. Yes, Aalto. Very, very famous university.
Well, actually, it used to be Helsinki University of Technology, Helsinki University, Helsinki School of Economics, and Helsinki School of Arts. But they merged, and it became Aalto University. And they have a campus in Korea as well.
Where?
For the MBA. In the assist. It's an assist university now. The Seoul School of Integrated Technologies. It's near the Eva University.
This is where Cho Dong-sung, Professor Cho,
he's now
president.
No, there is Kim Tae-yong is president, but Cho Dong-sung is actually one of the initiator of that when he was dean of the School of Economics in Seoul University.
I see. Yes.
So that time he actually initiated in 1995. So there was just 25 years celebration now. So there is more than 4,000 alumni in Korea who graduated from
already
that.
4,000?
More than 4,000.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yes, it's the most successful MBA program in Korea.
Okay.
With a foreign content, which is you have a double degree, including the Finnish degree.
That's a lot of alumni.
Yes.
4,000.
Actually, it's this one.
Oh.
it's this one. So
very impressive, because 4,000 is a big, large number.
Yeah. Well, okay. This 2018 was Hanguk Tongmun 3,997.
Wow,
now
that's 4,000.
Yeah, right. But that was 1918, 2 years ago. So since every year more than 100 or 200 something.
That's a larger number.
So basically now it's more than 4,000.
Even Cambridge doesn't have that much alumni numbers.
In Korea.
Yeah.
But of course this program is in Korea 1.5 years, and then 2 weeks is in Helsinki.
2 weeks?
Yes. 2 weeks is in Helsinki in this program.
I see. So it may be easier because it's in Korea.
Yeah, right. So you join here, and of course the professors and the program is approved by the Aalto. So they are not all Korean professors. There is few approved Korean professors, but the other professors came from Finland, because it consists of 2-week modules for different subjects, and then the modules is run by the professor from Finland, but also from US and Australia and some other approved professors based on.
Is it tuition expensive?
Well, it's MBA, so MBA, EMBA, executive MBA. So you do it actually at the side of your work. So it's either weekend or evening.
I see.
So basically, yes. I would say that it's not expensive if you compare to the being in US, for instance. But of course, there is a cost.
Well, but it's an impressive number.
Yeah.
And the history is not that long. I mean,
from 95, it's 25 years now.
25 years.
Yes. So.
You have been engaged in various different companies and businesses in the period of your stay in Korea, but of course related businesses, but different companies and different.
I have had mainly 2 companies. The first company. Well, mainly, but then I'll explain a little bit. So in the beginning, I was sent here by this Tamrock, which is now Sandvik Group, and the main equipment was drilling for civil engineering and mining. Actually, I'm graduated mining engineer at that time. So, but I concentrated on applications. So I became a more mechanical engineer because I learned the mining methods and excavation methods, and then how to make a machine from hand drills. Or then mechanizing it. Now the next stage is how to make it more automated. without man. So you use the AI also in some of that, and you use robotics, and you use different automation techniques. But anyhow, that's then the next generation. So first was the handrail. When I practiced, when I did my apprentice,
you actually used
I used the handrail in mines. But then there was the mechanization process, and then after that, the kind of automation. And these days, no man, actually in dangerous areas. But that was the first company. Then after that, well, actually in beginning of 90s, you know, Korea had a big boom.
Construction boom, yes.
Yeah, but you know, Finland, Soviet Union collapsed, and because of history, we had a lot of barter trade with Russia, with Soviet Union. Everything was barter trade, and the government and politicians agreed because we had to pay the repatriation. Then after that, it started into business because we had the relations and they needed more of the equipment. So we started selling to Soviet Union. But we got oil from there and we got something what they have. But they didn't have technology much because we supplied technology and we get oil. But in beginning of 90s, Soviet collapsed. So all our business went out, nothing. Because I think more than 50% of export was to Soviet Union. So Finland had actually very big crisis, nose diving. So that time I was in Korea, and actually I lost my job in Sandvik. But they gave us, I joined with the company in Korea, and then I had a share even in the company, and we get the agency of the company. And then we started selling it here, and it was booming. Also, we sold then we selected then other Finnish companies. So maybe you remember, long time ago there was this, when you piling, there was a big smoke coming out and a lot of noise. Boom, boom. I don't know if you remember that kind of things from side. Big smoke and then a lot of noise when you piles down to the ground. That's kind of diesel hammers, which was very environmentally unfriendly. And that time we had in Finland the technology with hydraulic. So we introduced that one to Korea, and it was a real boom here. So we replaced
hydraulic
hammer instead of the diesel hammer with a lot of smoke and a lot of sharp noise. So we introduced that, and that was real success. Even that time, Igun, Samsung chairman, wanted to make his car factory in Busan in the beginning of 90s. Maybe you know that he liked cars.
Yes. He liked cars.
He liked cars. So, you know, he had the very speed up to make his Samsung car factory. So, you know, because that was also wetland, and they actually in Noksan area of Busan. So, you know, we had to deliver 50 tons of hammers by air freight so that they could do the piling in time. They wanted quickly. So the freight cost of those hammers was more than the hammer price when they ordered it.
Wow. So it was a wetland, they wanted to landfill?
Landfill, like a reclamation, like Incheon Airport, similar. Busan, the Noksan industrial area is all landfill.
Noksan?
Yeah, in that is Cheongjeong-dong, in western side of Busan, south of the Kimhae Airport, where the factories. But it's not only the Samsung factory. There's a lot of industrial area and subcontractors to the car plant as well. So that time I remember to the Samsung site, we air freighted 50 tons of steel systems for the hydraulic hammers. So that was the other thing during those days. So because we worked with the distributor here, I was actually part owner. So then we introduced a lot of other technologies, not only that company. And the piling was one, also crushing, also some other drilling item, also some other technology related to that.
So you introduced all these Finnish technology to Korea, and you sold them, and you had partial ownership of these companies. And this is when Finland was suffering because of the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Yes, so it was helping actually. Some of the companies would have probably collapsed, but we sold to Korea.
Okay, good.
So
that was both sides. You did good for Finland, and you did for the companies, and you also did good for the Korean side as well. So
well, that time, it was not only apartment. There's so many the high-speed railway. There's a lot of high-speed, the highway works, and well, Korea had the 5-year plans, and there was so many things going on during those days.
Yeah, in those days. Yes.
So it was very helpful for Finland that we introduced the technology that exists from Finland. During those days also, the precast concrete factories were introduced to Korea. Precast concrete. PC. For instance, under Incheon Airport, there is rainwater sewage, which are big. So they were produced, the factory was set up at Yeongjongdo by Finnish technology and Finnish key components. And they produced the biggest PC sewer was weighing some more than 50 tons, 60 tons, something like that.
What is PC?
Precast concrete. So you make precast. So you make the pieces in advance and then you lift them in place. Instead of concreting in the site. So you can build it faster because you produce ready and then you just transport it and put it in place. Yes, that's PC, precast. And those factories, there's about 11, I think, at least 11 in Korea. But in apartment and other construction, it was not that successful. But industrial site and other, you have a ready-made parts, and then you just install. You can build it faster than just concreting and making the mold at site.
For industrial,
well, in Finland it's used also for apartment, but in Korea, the tall apartments, it seemed not to be that good, so they are concreting it all the way up. But for industrial sites and also for bridges and some other areas, you have the ready components and you just lift them in place.
Bridges and industrial sites?
Some bridges, but some bridges you also mold, but some part, especially industrial factories, you have the ready beams and you put them in place and then you just build the building like that.
What about roads?
Well, in road areas, the foundation and the drilling part and making tunnels, that is Finland's very high technology in Finland.
Tunnels? We have a lot of tunnels.
Yes, most of it. I remember in the beginning of 90s, I had a seminar in Grand Intercontinental Ballroom. I had 200 people from all the construction companies introducing the tunneling methods. How can do well. I remember it was a really success that time.
Okay. So you... In the 90s was your heyday.
But then, you know what happened?
What?
97. You know what happened in 97?
Yeah.
End of 97?
IMF came.
You know, almost everything stopped. Everything almost stopped. Also in the equipment. But for some time, when everything stopped, you know, the currency went to half. And those who bought the foreign equipment, suddenly they could get more than from the new by selling them second-hand. So we sold a little bit out of them, you know, then re-exporting, because they paid Korean won. If they paid all, suddenly they bought with $1,000 or let's say $100,000 new equipment. But they changed to Korean won, 700 won per dollar was that time, the rate. But then it went all the way to 1,500. And if you had paid it with 700, well, you could have a double money or a little bit less because you used the equipment. So you could actually get more money out of it by selling it somewhere else. But anyhow, then was very hard time. So in the 2000, I was actually invited then to run this Cargotec in Korea, which was a small company that time, maybe 8 billion won, about Palsibok. And then in 20 years, I grow it to 60 billion. 60 billion, that's about Yukpegok.
This is a Korean company?
Yeah, but it was owned by, the Finnish group Cargotec. But basically 100% registered in Korea, yes.
I see.
So we had factory in Cheongju and so on. So I would feel that I did my main work in Korea for the last 20 years to develop that business.
What does Cargotec do? Is it also container?
Yeah, also, but my area was mainly the scrap handling. Komulsang, you know, you collect the scrap and waste. But then also, actually, the single biggest user is Korean Army for the rocket handling and for ammunition handling.
In what way?
Well, let's say, you know, the MLR multi-launch rocket system, Korean called Taeyeonjang. You heard of that?
Yeah.
So all the rockets that's loaded in there is loaded by our cranes. You load it, so we cooperated with Hanha Defense. It used to be Tucson DST before, but then
So
Hanha
your
took
cranes actually loaded the missiles?
Yes, and the rockets and all ammunition. So we developed that together with the Agency of Defense Development.
So how does it work? I mean, your equipment, you supplied it to the army? No? Or you
No, we supply nothing to army. So basically there is an integrator. You know, the total missile system or the rocket system, whatever. Like the now the Hanha Defense, maybe you know, they took over the Tucson TST.
Yeah.
So we worked with Tucson first, but then also the Kia Motors, they used to have the military vehicles in Gwangju. So we worked with them, and they integrate. But also Kia Motors is not the final integrator. Then there was like Rotem and Samsung Techwin, and those guys make the total system. So we are just a subcontractor.
I see. So you supply to them, and then they make the total system.
Well, like Kia didn't make total system, but they make the truck and the crane, and then they supply that further, who makes the total system.
I see. So you are part of one part of the system.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. So those were very big and demanding projects.
I see.
Because we had to do all the tests in cold chambers and electromagnetic emittance tests and all of that. So normally the test for one equipment takes 2 years. But we did it.
So how do you find working with Korean companies? How was it?
I think it's very easy.
Really?
Very reasonable and very good. I don't feel any difficult.
That there's a lot of, because of corporate cultural differences.
Yeah, my biggest issue was fight with the head office. My head office was biggest issue because they want to apply some rules that is common globally. But I tried to say that we have to work in Korea like we do other Koreans. And if we work like other Koreans, I didn't see any difficulties. Well, of course, difficulties as such to compete and meet all the demand and so on. But I feel that's normal. If we don't meet it, why would you work with you? That's natural. But I feel that if you do what you are asked by the customer, I didn't feel any big problem. They didn't try to bully you. If you do what they want. But if you are too proud and say we don't follow you, it's natural. You should listen to customer. It's easy. That's a basic for sales or basic for success. Listen to customer. And in Korea, if you do that, I don't see any difficulty.
Did you have to do a lot of lobbying to politicians or anything?
No, I don't consider that kind of thing. No. Just technology, but I think the biggest issue to being successful is to work with the people in charge and support them when they need something. I think that's the most important. Okay, maybe before politicians had power and they said what they want, even they are not the best thing. But I think that is nonsense. That would have gone the wrong way. The important thing is you have a good technology, but then you apply it, and those people who are in charge, you support them well. If they need to do their report or they need to do their total plan, you support them seamlessly. That's enough.
So do you say that building trust and understanding each other is the most important thing in working and having success in the country?
And being fast. You know, Korea wants to be fast.
Very fast. Yes.
Right. Pali pali. If you are not there, you know, you lose your trust or you lose your credibility.
Very true.
So if you support the person who is in charge and he trusts you that you support him in his work, he wants to work with you. There's no need lobbying. Just you support the people who work with you. I would say that's, of course, maybe before when I first came to Korea, that was Rote-EU time. And I think at that time we didn't have own company. We worked as, actually I had the agents, but as I felt that time, the policies were different. Maybe the politicians ordered you have to work with him or him or him, or maybe they collected money openly. But anyhow, I didn't like that kind of way. I thought that was actually a nuisance if you have to work with those. So I tried to stay away. But then, fortunately, after Rote-EU, it changed to Kim Jong-sam, right? And then it kind of actually that during Rote-EU, Nomuyon time, then there was founded this Pupepangji Vivone. Actually, I was invited by Nomuyon that time to speak to the governors, ministers, and Komsa CEOs. I mean, the government company CEOs in Blue House. And you know, everybody didn't want to greet me after that speaking because I was telling in Finland we don't have corruption and how to handle that. And you know, everybody escaped.
In Finland?
Oh, in Blue House, in Chongwade.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
So I had Mr. No called me, oh, Ranta, please speak up. That time, I was in a big meeting room, maybe there was 100 people. And so I had a 10 minutes or 15 minutes presentation. And after that,
no one wants to talk to you.
Yeah, because I said, I blasted a bomb, so they felt that if this kind of policy applied in Korea, they were scared.
Everyone's going to go to jail, huh? Anyway.
So, cheers.
Cheers.
Kombe.